Obviously, in science, kids need to obtain information. This is really one of the basics of scientific inquiry. Of course, obtaining information comes in lots of forms, but traditionally doing research and taking notes from varied sources is part of this process of obtaining information, which indeed is a science practice in the NGSS. So when middle school students hit your class, there are a wide range of abilities with note taking and even reading levels. So finding ways to scaffold this process for your students will make life much easier for you and will help them build these skills that they need. Letting them just go free and say, hey, read this and take some notes, at least in my experience, hasn't worked out that well. You end up with a page of unorganized, oftentimes copied notes that don't really get to the point. Also, students have a lot of experience doing research projects where they're trying to collect information about one single topic. For example, maybe they've researched a favorite animal, so they come up with this huge array of information about that animal, and then they're asked to write a research report that basically summarizes the information. Oftentimes in science, we're asking deeper questions, so students need to be able to find more specific information in the texts they're reading. They also need to evaluate that information to figure out if it's important for their end goal. For example, if they're putting together an argument about whether water quality in a certain creek is good for the wildlife that lives there, they need to not just collect information about what wildlife there is, what water quality looks like, but they need to find information that helps them make a final decision or determination. This is a way harder skill than just collecting information for a general topic. A couple things to think about when you're having students read and take notes is where in the year is this happening? If it's the beginning of the year, obviously a little more scaffolding is probably required. But as you get to know your students and give them more opportunities, these scaffolds can be lifted so that by the end of the year they're doing more open-ended note-taking because they've developed some of those skills. Let's get atomic project where students are attempting to create a timeline of atomic theory and developing an understanding of how ideas change over time in science. Some of my students would be ready to go and do this research on their own without specific texts and without an organizer. For these students, I can just give them sort of a brief idea of what kinds of information they're looking for, names of people, dates, major points for that person's theory, maybe even diagrams or models that show that theory. I could say, hey, I'll challenge you to find 6 different people that had different ideas or 6 different theories. Other students, because of either their reading level or their ability to take notes, need a lot more scaffolding. So what I've done is, in this case, I've put together a PowerPoint with just the information students need. And then along with the PowerPoint, I give them a very structured organizer that looks like this. This organizer lays out for students exactly the types of information we're looking for. Now, I realize that an end goal would be that we could give students an interesting question, or students could generate their own really interesting question and just go out and find information that supports a claim they're trying to make. But in reality, when we have such diverse groups of kids in our rooms, it's okay to provide lots and lots of structure, especially at the beginning of the year. I know coming in, as I teach 6th grade, that many of my students have never conducted research like this, so I find that it's my job as a science teacher and also a teacher of literacy to provide them opportunities for success. It seems a little close-ended, maybe a little prescriptive, but especially at the beginning of the year, I don't find anything wrong with it because students are learning skills. Now, what I like to do is I pair this organizer with that PowerPoint that I made, and I will walk students through several slides. Those slides do not have extra information on them, but what you can do is as you get farther along, you can have distractor information where kids then can practice figuring out, okay, so I see this guy Niels Bohr, the dates are this, okay, but what is really the idea that he's trying to get across? And I might give them more information on that slide than they actually need to get that. And that gives students a chance to practice extracting information from text. But like I said, What we really want to do is we want to instill skills, help kids practice this idea of obtaining information and making sense of it so they can communicate it later. I really believe strongly that by providing these organizers and things like the PowerPoint, that we can get students to understand that note-taking is actually a really interactive, active process. It's not me standing in the front with a PowerPoint saying, write this down. It's students interacting with the text with help from me and with help from the organizer so that they can extract the information that they can then use at the end of the project.